on the record. Good evening. This is a public comment hearing for docket number EFSB 24-01, DPU 24-135 for the Hingham Electrical Infrastructure Reliability Project. My name is Donna Sharkey. I'm the presiding officer with the Siting Division of the Energy Facilities Siting Board, and I will be in charge of conducting the hearing this evening. The Siting Division is the support staff to the Siting Board, the agency charged with reviewing proposed large energy projects in Massachusetts. I'd like to welcome everyone to this evening's hybrid public comment hearing regarding a project proposed by Hingham Municipal Light Plant, HMLP, and Eversource Energy. This proposed project is docketed with the Siting Board using the combined siting docket I just gave you. I am joined this evening by Andrew Green, Director of the Siting Division, Joan Foster Evans, General Counsel of the Siting Division, Daniel Kelleher, who is co-presiding officer, who is out by the table as you came in, and Caleb Chang, energy analyst. Commissioner Cecile Frazier, a DPU commissioner, is joining us remotely, as you can see on the screen. My colleagues and I are here this evening to listen to comments and questions from you, and if appropriate, to facilitate responses to them from the petitioners. Please note that this public comment hearing is being recorded. The video of the hearing will be available for viewing on our YouTube channel and will be provided to your local public access cable channel, Harbor Media, for later broadcast by them. If you are having any technical difficulty with Zoom, please call or text 857-200-0065 for assistance. The proposed project consists of three components. The first, a new tap station on Broad Street in Weymouth, which Eversource would construct, own, and operate to tap into an existing Eversource transmission line. The second, an approximately 3.2 mile long, 115 kV underground new transmission line, which HMLP would construct, own, and operate, that would run primarily along public ways in both Weymouth and Hingham to transmit electricity to Hingham. And the last component, the new substation, which HMLP would also construct, own, and operate at the transfer station site off Old Hobart Street in Hingham to receive electricity and distribute it to HMLP's customers. A description of each of these three components and a map showing potential routes for the new transmission line and the locations of the new tap station and new substation appear in the notice you may have received by mail or seen in the newspaper. If you have not received a copy of the notice, we have copies available here for your review tonight. Council and company representatives for HMLP and Eversource will make a presentation regarding the project. I will then invite the public, both those in person and those on Zoom or telephone, to comment or ask questions. As appropriate, I will ask the company representatives to respond to the questions as we go. For those of you who participate by using Zoom or telephone, you will have a full opportunity to see and hear everything said during this hearing and to offer comments and ask questions. Participation instructions are in the notice of the public comment hearing that was published in the newspapers and sent to addresses near the project. The notice for tonight's hearing in Hingham is posted on the Siting Board's project webpage the EFSB calendar, and the HMLP project website. The notice also has links to obtain additional information. The two public comment hearings tonight and the March 25th hearing held in Weymouth mark the beginning of a formal state-level decision-making process focused on whether to approve the project. In reviewing the project, the siting board will do the following. Pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 164, Section 69J, the siting board will review HMLP's proposed project to ensure that it will provide a reliable energy supply with a minimum impact on the environment at the lowest possible cost. Pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 40A, Section 3, the siting board will determine whether to exempt the project from zoning requirements of the town of Hingham and the town of Weymouth, based on whether the present or proposed use of the land or structures is reasonably necessary for the convenience or welfare of the public. There are multiple ways that you can participate in the department and siting board's review of the project. In addition to commenting on the project tonight, you may file written comments by Monday, April 14th, 2025, by email to me and to the DPU filing email address listed in the notice, and to the project council, whose addresses are also listed in the notice. After tonight's hearings, you may choose to seek participation as an intervener or a limited participant in the proceeding. The deadline for requesting participation as an intervener or as a limited participant is Monday, April 14th, 2025. You may participate as a full intervener. A full intervener has rights to request discovery questions of the company, to present witnesses, to ask questions of witnesses testifying at the hearings, to file briefs and motions, and to appeal the decision of the siting board. In the alternative, you may seek to participate as a limited participant, which would allow you to receive filings made in this proceeding and file briefs with the siting board. A limited participant does not have the right to appeal the decision. Information on participation is published on the siting board website, which outlines the different ways in which you can participate in the proceedings. The information on participation is also in the public comment hearing notice for this proceeding. If you would like a copy of the notice and the intervention rules, you can pick them up at the table that Mr. Kelleher is sitting at, or you can send your contact information to my email at donna.sharkey@mass.gov, and I can send you the information by email. Next, I will ask the company to make a presentation regarding the project. After that presentation, I will open the floor to comments and questions from members of the public. The project's legal counsel and its representatives are participating in this public comment hearing. Would legal counsel for the companies please introduce themselves and note their appearances for the record?
Good evening. Thank you, Attorney Sharkey. For HMLP, my name is Robert Shapiro of the firm of Duncan & Allen, 25 Braintree Hill Park, Braintree, Massachusetts. Appearing with me virtually today is Attorney Deirdre Lawrence, right? I believe she's here. She's appearing with me virtually. After Eversource's attorney provides an appearance, Mr. Thomas Marhan, General Manager of HMLP, and Tracy Adamski of Ty and Bond will make the presentation.
Would the attorneys from Keegan Worland be making an appearance tonight as well? Yes. Thank you.
Good Good evening. My name is Erica Hafner. I'm appearing on behalf of Eversource Energy with the law firm of Keegan Werlin in 99 High Street in Boston. Appearing with me remotely is David Rosenzweig. Eversource will construct, own, and operate the tap station portion of the project tonight, and we have subject matter experts available in person and online to answer any questions that the public may have. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to note that HMLP provided a certification that it distributed the notice for this public comment hearing in the manner the citing board required. Would HMLP like to present the project? After its presentation, we will open the floor for comments and questions for the public.
Good evening. My name is Tom Morahan. I'm the general manager of Hingham Municipal Lighting Plant. I'd like to take an opportunity to thank everyone for coming out tonight to join us. I'm going to go through a short presentation tonight, myself and Tracy Adamski from Ty and Bond. So we have an agenda just to talk about the need of the project, an overview of the project, the schedule, some of the construction process, how we're going to manage impacts during the construction, the permitting, the outreach that we've completed, and some project contacts at the end of the presentation. So Hingham Light, I think most people here know we've been around for a while. It was created by the citizens of Hingham and for to provide service to the citizens of Hingham. Our mission is to provide reliable electric service to the town of Hingham while keeping our rates reasonable, service quality high, operations environmentally friendly, sustainable, and including commitment to 100% carbon free energy. Hingham Light's one of 2,000 public power systems in the country and one of 40 within Massachusetts. And we currently serve approximately 10,500 customers in Hingham. So we're proposing to construct a new underground transmission line, 115,000 volts, starting in Weymouth, underground to a location in within Hingham at the transfer station. It's 3.2 miles. The underground tap station in Weymouth will be owned and operated by Eversource. And obviously the one in Hingham will be owned and operated by Hingham. Again, it's 115 kV line, and the project will protect the Hingham customers from extended outages. And it will also support our climate action plan and state electrification goals. We're proposing to start construction in 2027 and have initial operations sometime in 2029. So what do we need the project for? If you look down the railroad tracks here, you'll notice that our current feed is on these single poles. There's 2 circuits on these single poles, about 22 poles in total. Unlike larger utilities, we have one station in Hingham. So if we lose the feed to that one station in Hingham, we're pretty much at until we can get the at least one of those lines back up. A new transmission system like this underground will address the needs of state and federal power system reliability guidelines. Our reliability is good in Hingham, but again, it wouldn't take that much to take down one of those poles. We did look at other approaches. We looked at increasing solar, we looked at battery storage. Unfortunately, none of these would address the issues that we see. So when we started this, we looked at a number of different routes from Hingham to Weymouth or Weymouth to Hingham, however you'd like to look at it. But there were a universe of routes, and, we ultimately selected two routes that we're proposing to build a line on. So I'm going to let Tracy talk about the sites, road selection.
Thanks, Tom. So I'm Tracy Adamski with Ty and Bond, and we've been assisting HMLP with the siting and environmental pieces. So for this project, there's the three components, and we followed a similar process looking at each of them, looking at a range of different sites for both the tap station in Weymouth and the substation in Hingham. And once those were identified, we looked at, as Tom had on the last slide, a variety of routes to try and connect those 2 points, the Weymouth tap and the Hingham substation. And so we looked at a number of criteria and factors, from environmental factors to the uses along the route to constructability factors, and applied them to the routes to come up with what is our preferred and noticed routes, which are in front of the board today. And so we also looked at these for with respect to costs and reliability and community input. And so this boiled down to a preferred route and a noticed alternative route. Our preferred route right now is identified as the red line on the map here, and that generally follows Broad Street down to High Street and then up French Street to Hobart to connect to the substation. And that's 3.2 miles. The noticed alternative route is that blue route, and that generally comes out of the Weymouth Tap Station down Broad Street and then turns on to Spring and Essex to Lake Street, and comes back up to Broad Street either through Water Street or Shawmut Street, and then continues to follow High Street to French and Hobart. And that the noticed alternative route is 3.7 miles. The Weymouth Tap Station is located on an Eversource-owned property that's adjacent to the existing transmission right-of-way. It's an air-insulated tap, and as has been stated before, it'll be constructed, owned, and operated by Eversource. The Hobart substation will be a gas-insulated substation located at the northeastern corner of the Hingham's transfer station. And it's also in close proximity to the to HMLP's existing Hobart substation, so that those can the substations can tie into each other and backfeed each other. So main impacts from the project will be construction impacts related to the transmission line. These will be temporary. HMLP will work with Weymouth and Hingham officials for traffic management, street restoration, and construction hours. HMLP will have a hotline and community liaison who can answer questions during the construction project. And there'll be their plans in place and best management practices, which will be used to address noise, traffic, and dust-related impacts during the construction process. Typical construction process for the underground line is the line will be marked out on the pavement, it'll be saw cut, the trench will be excavated, the new duct line will be put into place and then paved over. Vaults, which are the manholes, will also be installed along the route. There'll be a temporary road surfacing. The cable will be installed into the ducts. They'll also be pulled through and spliced at the manhole locations. And then once the pavement has had some time to settle, there'll be a permanent restoration curb to curb along all the roads along the route. And so there's a number of key permits and approvals that will be needed for this project. Here's a list of them, starting with the EFSB petition to construct, which is where we're here today. We'll also be in front of the conservation commissions for both Hingham and Weymouth. And then there's a number of construction-related permits required. And there's been a large number of meetings throughout the project to get us to this point today. We've had approximately 20 meetings with a variety of municipal officials, both in Weymouth and Hingham, starting in December of 2020. And a number of in-person open houses that you can see the list here, both in Weymouth and Hingham and on Zoom, to let people know what the project is about and to gain feedback through the project. We have the public meetings that are here for the EFSB. That was last week and today. And then we expect to continue with our federal, state, and local permitting from now to the end of 2026, with construction starting in 2027 and operations beginning in 2029. And then if people have questions or comments, there is a project-specific website, which is HEIRP.com. And there's email and phone number that you can reach. You can reach HMLP and ask questions or provide additional comments. And Eversource also has an email and phone number for folks to contact them as well. And that's the end of our presentation this evening.
Thank you. Next, we will proceed with public comments regarding the project. We begin with federal, state, and local officials, appointed as well as elected officials who wish to be heard. Then we will proceed with members of the public who have signed up to speak in the order in which they have signed up. And finally, we will allow anyone who wishes to speak but did not have the chance to sign up and let us know in advance to speak. If you are participating remotely and I call upon you to speak, we will move you into the Zoom panel so you can be seen and heard by the Zoom audience as well as those of us here in the auditorium. For all speakers, please give your name and address, spell your last name, and speak slowly and clearly. Please stop speaking if you see me raise my hand. If a company responds to a comment or question asked is appropriate, I will ask the company to respond. A stenographer is transcribing this public comment hearing. In order to accurately transcribe everything, he needs to hear you clearly. In addition to the transcript, we are recording tonight's public comment hearing and will post the recording on the Siting Board's YouTube channel. Anyone can review the recording at the YouTube channel address included in the notice. Do we have any federal officials present or on Zoom that wish to comment? Do we have any state officials present or on Zoom that wish to comment? Please raise your hand, either in person or on Zoom. Are there any local officials present or on Zoom that wish to comment? Please raise your hand in person or on Zoom. Then we will proceed to take comments from members of the general public, beginning with those who have registered in the order in which they have registered. When called, please give your name, spell your last name, and then give your address. First person who has signed up is Mark Duff. Could he please come up to the podium?
Thank you for hosting this. For those of you who don't know me, and I think most of you do, I worked 45 years in the Hingham Fire Department. I retired as chief.
I'm sorry, Mr. Duff, can you, it's just a formality, but it's for the transcript. Can you just spell your last name and give your address? please?
I'll not only do that, I'll spell my first name.
Thank you.
MARKDUFF. And I live at 37 Bradley Park Drive. And I'm fourth generation of Hingham. And proud of it. Anyways, to get back to my comments, in the 45 years I served the town, I also served as the emergency management director for 20 of those. And we are blessed with the light department we have in this community. I can't say enough about it. I was talking to somebody just yesterday about lights going out. And it was from a local town, not served by a municipal. And we were talking about outages. And I said, when we have a 4-hour outage in Hingham, that's a 4-day outage in most communities surround us. And I mean that seriously. I remember one of the last years I served as fire chief. We had an outage down in Cohasset, Norwell, Situate. They were out, places and parts of Cohasset in those towns were out for 4 or 5 days or more. And I knew that very well because if you went to the sub shop down in Station Street in Hingham, there was 50 people in line because nobody could cook in their homes, et cetera, et cetera. Anyways, this is very important. The town of Hingham gets behind this project and moves it forward. I'd like to refer to one of my experiences when I was the assistant emergency management director. And it occurred on November 30th, 1991, when both lines that serve Hingham failed. For those of you who don't know it, and please from the light department, correct me if I'm wrong, there's 2 lines overhead that you saw on the slide. At any one time, only one is online feeding the town. Is that correct? No? One line will operate the town. Okay. Both lines went down. And they went down for 23 hours on a Saturday, 2 days after Thanksgiving. The temperatures that particular day, fortunately, were in the 60s. For the record, the temperature, and that was 2 days after Thanksgiving. For the record, the temperature on 2 days after Thanksgiving in 2024 was 28 degrees. I used to stress to people as the emergency management director, people in the light department may not want to hear this. People can live without electricity, but you can't live without heat. And you can't have heat if you don't have electricity. For 23 hours, the town went down. Fortunately, it was a crew, a specialized crew that got it back up and running. But this third line that they're putting in, they're talking about putting in, if that ever happened again, being underground, et cetera, would provide a tremendous amount of additional security to provide the power to the town, both from weather events, accidental events, and unfortunately today we have to talk about terrorism. So I strongly suggest that the people of Hingham get behind this project, and I sincerely hope it moves forward and happens. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person who signed up is Ed Johnson. Thank you. Mr. Johnson, can you go through the same exercise where you
Yes,
spell your last name and give your address? Thank
very simple, Johnsson. Good evening. I've been a resident of the town since 1977 on Ward Street. I've been a resident of the town since 1977 on Ward Street. Seen a lot of changes, most for the good naturally. It's a great town and to run very well. We do depend on our electricity, especially in the winter time. And Hingham White Plant does an excellent job. Always, anytime I have called them, they come right out and repairing any issue in the house. I just want to make that comment. I want to thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jennings. The next person is Ken Fitzgerald. Is Mr. Fitzgerald here?
Kenneth Fitzgerald, 14 Hobart Street, Fitzgerald. I'm in favor of the project. Most people don't realize the sensitivity of our power grid, so I applaud the efforts everybody's making. I had a couple of minor questions, if I may. Curious on the substation on the Hingham side, adjacent to the transfer station. Why was GIS selected over AIS? If I saw the map correctly in the presentation, you had AIS in Weymouth, GIS in Hingham. Was it because of space constraints?
Absolutely. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm Tom Converse with LIG Consultants. We looked at as you know, on Hobart Street, we looked at a bunch of parcels. And this parcel that we selected is very small. So unlike in Weymouth, where there's a pretty good sizable area, we went with GIS to condense the size of the switching station.
Makes perfect sense. If I may, one other question, maybe for you. Will there be any transformers located on the Hingham substation?
Under this filing, it's a reliability project. There is space there, but there's no plan to put any transformers in at this time.
Okay.
We did look at the need for a transformation there at this time, but our load has been pretty flat for over the last 10 years. We do expect in the next 10 to 15 years that the load will grow with electrification. So we did plan to have enough room at this station to add a transformer in future years, and it'll be built out for that.
Excellent. I don't have any other questions. Again, thank you for everything you're doing. Thank you.
The next person who signed up to speak is Paul Callahan.
My name is Paul Callahan, Callahan. I live at 61 Garrison Road here in Hingham. I think it was said that the placement at the landfill now is in the northeast corner. Can you be more specific on that exact location? Is it between the entrance to the transfer station and the exit to the transfer station?
So when you're exiting the transfer station, there's a driveway that comes down from the dumping area. There's a hill that goes up there.
Where the grass and leaves go?
No, this is as you're exiting the transfer station, it'll be on your right-hand side. There's a hill that goes up there. It's treed. It's covered with vegetation right now. Our plan is to dig that hill out, put a retaining wall along the back side of it, and create a landing spot for the station there.
So it will be very close to Old Hobart Street. Is that correct?
It would be, yeah, we're old, where it would come up, yeah. Old Hobart comes out that driveway.
Okay.
Yes.
My concern was I'm a volunteer for the Hingham swap area. There were rumors that we were going to lose the swap area. I want to make sure that's not happening.
That is not happening.
Okay.
We're
For
on
those
the other side of the station. Yeah.
For those who don't understand, the swap area actually saves us as taxpayers money. And it doesn't cost you taxpayers and me, any money because we do it as volunteers. So we're not paid. So I just want to make sure it's going to continue to exist. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person who signed up to speak is Gary Hondorf Dick.
Hi, excuse me. Hi, Gary Tondorf Dick, TONDORFDICK. I live at 1029 Main Street, and I'm speaking as a resident of Hingham, especially South Hingham. I support the idea of, and the concept here of redundancy relative to providing another line coming into the town, which is very, very much needed. And I appreciate your presentation. It's very informative. My question is, as we pursue the near and the distant future going to full electrification in the town, there's going to be a significant infrastructure upgrade, I'm assuming, relative to the, excuse me, the distribution of power to the surrounding neighborhoods in the town. And I'm thinking specifically in South Hingham, we're looking at the industrial park, South Shore Park, and that's going to be seen as a developed into a much better commercial resource for the town, which will necessitate additional power and distribution. And I'm also looking at other areas, neighborhoods east and north. And I'm just curious, are the conductors going to be overhead conductors, much like we're seeing now, that would be in a larger frequency? I mean, for example, the second set of conductors that was put in from the current plant down, I went down through Cushing Street and or Main Street to Gardner Street out to the Blue Cross and Blue Shield Data Center, 13.8 conductors. If we were to provide the appropriate infrastructure to feed the electrification that we see happening, what does that mean in terms of the distribution, the character of that on Main Street and the older historic streets in the town? Is it going to be a significant overhead series of conductors added, or is there a possibility, this is 115 kV, is there a possibility of taking a primary line down further to, for example, the old power station on Cushing Street, or going down further into the South Shore Park and providing a centralized substation or a decentralized substation for those specific areas? I'm concerned about the increase in the infrastructure provisions and what that impact is on the quality of the historic streetscapes and the residential areas in the town. Thank you very much.
Would HMLP like to respond to his questions?
Sure. So Hingham Light is constantly looking at our loads, and you'll see us out there almost daily reconductoring. We do a lot of reconductoring every year. So we're going from number 2 up to 4 in a lot of spots, making sure our backbone is big enough to handle the loads coming in the future. Our system is 100% copper, so that 4 copper will carry the load that we see coming. So as far as South Hingham, we are looking as part of this, not part of this project, but we are looking at putting in some duct banks going up French Street as we do this project for future growth in South Hingham. It'll get us out of the station and up to High Street, at least at this time. But we don't see the load growth in the next 5 to 10 years as being an issue for us. And we don't see the need to go to a higher voltage in the future.
So we won't be seeing an increase in the quantity of conductors, but an upsizing in the sizing of the copper conductors, which would handle the load and minimize the impact on the overhead transmission in terms of what the impact on the streetscape.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Appreciate that. Thank you.
So is there anyone in the audience who didn't sign up who would like to come up and offer a comment or ask a question? Please come up.
Hello, it's Philip Reska. RESCA, and 198 Hobart Street in Hingham. So I heard that the two criteria that the siting board talked about were the lowest possible cost and then also the exemption from zoning rules. So again, I agree with the Chief Duff and others that our electricity now is extremely reliable. So I'm trying to understand the cost benefit part of this. The again, we tap now into about a mile from the substation, and we're choosing to go 3.2 or 3.7 miles. And I haven't seen the cost of what it costs to install the tap, what it then costs to come across the 3.2 or 3.7 miles. And then the other third element of cost to put the substation in, and just trying to understand that, as it just didn't seem to be included in the presentation. So any responses would be helpful. Thank you.
So let me just clarify in terms of what we look at. It's while we're assessing the project and hoping for the lowest possible cost, we also are attempting to minimize environmental impacts as part of that review as well.
Okay. And then I mentioned it earlier, but again, I didn't hear what was being requested in terms of what zoning exemptions, both from the Weymouth side and the Hingham side, are being requested or considered as part of this petition.
Well, essentially, they've requested an exemption from the zoning laws as a comprehensive exemption, which would mean while they may have identified specific issues related to lighting or setbacks or other elements of the zoning requirements in each of the individual towns, what they're essentially asking for is for the project to be built consistent with the way the HMLP has designed it. And therefore, whatever relief in whatever way that project may not strictly conform to the zoning bylaws of either town, that it would still go ahead and be approved.
So is that known or unknown at this point of where there's violations of the zoning?
So their council can address that, but they've gone through and identified issues related to zoning in both towns as part of their longer petition that was filed with us.
Thank you. We are seeking zoning exemptions both in Weymouth and in Hingham. In Weymouth, there was no zoning relief available to us. There was zoning relief available in Hingham. As you may know, in April through June of last year, we, in anticipation of the zoning exemption filing, we presented an informational filing to the Hingham Zoning Board and the Hingham Planning Board to get their feedback on the project. So it's all it all goes in together with the goal of getting one exemption from the state and not having inconsistent decisions from two different towns. And this is a pretty
Okay,
standard
and then
approach.
from the siting board, I guess that's a yay or nay essentially assessment.
Essentially what the siting board does is grant exemptions to the extent they're necessary if a project is going to be approved by the board.
Okay, trying to follow. Thank you.
Yep.
Now, can we talk about the cost?
Yeah, the costs are in the filing. But to give you a breakdown, and the tap is estimated at a $38.1 million. The transmission line on the route, the 3.2 route, mile route, is estimated at 47.7 million. And Hobart 2, we call it, the substation in the landfill, is estimated at 18.9 million for a total of 104.7.
Okay, so 104.7 million.
Yes.
In total.
Yes.
And again, I saw that two routes were proposed, but they were both from the same tap location. And I know I asked this last year, but if we were to tap from East Weymouth, what does that compare from 47 million to some other number? And understand there's
Yes.
more reliability, more diversity of route and all that, but I'm just trying to reconcile from
Where were you saying, from where?
the current feed now comes from East Weymouth. And that's about a mile route, and understand there's complications of going over, well, under the train tracks, et cetera. But I'm just trying to understand the cost benefit part of it, because you're asking, $104 million out of the ratepayers.
Yep. Well, are you asking if we considered coming from East Weymouth underground? Is that what you were proposing?
I saw that there was a need to show two routes, and instead of showing the alternate route was just to go longer, which would seem to be less appealing and more expensive.
Within the filing, we looked at a do nothing alternative, which obviously doesn't work. We looked at non-transmission outages. Well, we only have one substation. You can't refeed it from another one. And then we looked at a whole bunch of different options from East Weymouth, from North Abington, from Norwell. We looked at a bunch of them, and they are in the filing, and I think there's pricing in there too as well, right, Tracy? So they are in the filing, if you will.
We looked at 7 what we call alternative project approaches. Of those 7, only 2 of them met the need, the reliability need. And we looked at those 2, and of those 2, the extension from a new tap in Weymouth to a new substation in Hingham was the best. But it gets a little bit confusing here, because once we decided that was our project, then we looked at the routes. The routes come from whatever project you pick. If you went with a different alternative project with a different beginning and end point, you would come up with different routes. But we looked at all these alternatives, and the Hingham substation to the Weymouth tap was the all-around best in terms of dollars and on balance the best.
Okay, I've heard that, and I appreciate. I'll look up the filing and see those numbers. But yeah, again, I'm a huge beneficiary of the reliability that exists, especially on Hobart Street. And
Part of the issue we have double circuit towers back to East Weymouth, but there's also National Grid double circuit towers. So you'd really have to go, I think it's about 3.3 miles back to that same right of way where we're off of Broad Street to try and get a new connection and go underground. Then you have the issues with, there's 4 or 5 bridges. It's trying to work along an active MBTA track is tough to go underground. And there's a number of bridges along that way, as well as some areas that are wetlands and things like that. So it kind of got excluded. But you can't just go back to East Weymouth, because there's double circuit towers that have the same issue upstream. You have to go all the way back to the main right away.
Yep, yeah, I follow that and I agree. But we've obviously lived 40-something years on a single feed from Weymouth to Hingham, and we're buying a lot. We're buying, the Cadillac solution, if you will. But I'll leave it there. Thank you.
I believe you had your hand up. Please come up.
For having me. I'm Dr. Barry Belgorod, B-A-R-R-Y, and the last name is B-E-L-G-O-R-O-D. I'm a new Hinghamite, and I reside at 344 High Street, which is on both selected routes, right at the Weymouth border. My question is somewhat in follow-up to the statement that was made about routing the conduits and the wires near the train tracks. I heard that wasn't chosen and it wasn't deemed acceptable, but I'm not sure I understood that if train tracks can be built on that land, why excavating either next to it or under it would be problematic. Broad Street and High Street are both fairly high traffic arteries. And the areas around the train track are less habited, and they look like they may be less disruptive, at least during the construction phase. So I'd be interested in exactly why the train track area was deemed unacceptable.
I guess I can start to answer that. So it's really challenging to construct next to the MBTA tracks. They have certain setbacks that they need from the tracks and very limited times for when you can do construction along the track. So it would extend the period out. That being said, there's also a very limited right of way in many locations along the track. So there's really not the space for us to excavate next to the rail line, but there's also existing infrastructure associated with the tracks, as well as the existing electric infrastructure that further constrains that right of way. So there's really no space for us in many locations along the tracks. And that's the same location that Tom was talking about, where there's a number of bridges that we would need to cross and more environmental resource areas as well that we would need to cross and potentially impact along the rail lines.
Thank you.
Who would like to go next?
Susan Wetzel, 239 High Street, Hingham, Massachusetts. WETZ is in zebra, EL is in Larry. Thank you. One of the questions that I had is I went to the meeting in Weymouth on the 25th, and the Mayor Headland mentioned a memorandum of understanding between the town of Weymouth and the town of Hingham. And he said that we would be developing that jointly as towns. I haven't heard anybody mention that today, but that was Mayor Headland. My question is, could you kind of explain to us what that memorandum of understanding may or may not include, and how would that be impacted in terms of the cost? And would that cost be borne also outside of the cost of the actual power line?
Thank you. We have had no discussions yet about the specifics of a memorandum of understanding or any other kind of agreement. We have talked about a memorandum of understanding, but no discussions have begun. So I can't give you any specifics in terms of what will be in it.
Well, if there was a memorandum of understanding, how would the public know what that is? And how can we anticipate? I am assuming that we're going to pay for that as ratepayers.
Well, some of the things that will be in the memorandum of understanding are possibly things that are already included in the cost. We have to work those things out. I don't want to get into discussion today of what's going to be in it, because we haven't had that discussion yet. But that memorandum of understanding will be public and more than likely will be provided to the siting board.
And so we'll know. Once again, I've heard complaints from people that are direct abutters that for some reason, I don't know how many houses are along Broad Street and High Street, and then High Street into Hingham. I don't know, but I'm hearing from people. I have done canvassing before along French Street and High Street to see if everyone is receiving their notices about what is coming. The last time I did that, I didn't have any direct abutters that had received a written notice. And once again, for clarification, I live on High Street. I live at 239, so I'm not going to be a direct abutter. But I would like to know, are things being mailed to the residents? And are they being received? And how can we verify that as a community, that not only the town of Hingham, but the town of Weymouth is getting those notices? Because I know a lot of people and questions are being asked.
So Mr. Shapiro, maybe you could explain to her what the certificate of service process is, as well as the notice that the siting board directed the company to provide.
Right. First, let me start by saying that the siting board issued what they call an order of notice, which required us to provide all sorts of notice. For example, making sure that copies of the petitions were in the libraries and the town halls in both of the in both of the towns. We're also required to mail the 7-page notice. I believe it was 7-page by first-class mail. And we used 2 lists. We used a list of all property owners and we used an address list. And so in some cases that overlapped if a property owner didn't live at the address. We did get about, I don't have the new total, we did get about 300 back over, but well over 5,000 letters went out. And we're in the process right now of determining, which ones came back and why. Were they apartment buildings? Most of them appear at this point to be apartment buildings, but we're still going through them to figure out how many there are and the reason why some of them came back.
So when will the public know about that?
We have to, we're still getting those return letters, okay? And we want to go through those and make an assessment.
Okay, so when somebody says, I didn't know about it, what's the process for that?
We provided a return of service already to the siting board to explain everything we did. The siting board has also asked us to follow up with respect to the return notices, and we will be doing that publicly as well.
Okay, thank you very much for that. One other thing, I was a little bit confused about the cost that you mentioned. I attended a meeting in Weymouth, the last meeting, and the one before the last meeting in Weymouth. And at that meeting, the price that was given to us, this was maybe a year, 2 years ago, I can't remember, was $110 million that would be borne by the taxpayers of the town of Hingham. And the rate that you gave us a year and a half, 2 years later is $6 million less. With the cost of inflation, can you explain to me why that rate was one rate before and it's one rate? And the other question, just for a point of clarification, is the town of Hingham paying for the tap station that's going to be owned by EverSource, or is EverSource paying for that?
So everything in this project will be borne by the ratepayers in Hingham, including that tap station in Weymouth. Although EverSource will own and operate it, we will pay for the construction of that station.
Why won't we own it? Why won't the ratepayers own it?
Because it's on EverSource's property and it's a requirement of EverSource for them to own that station.
And is HMLP have the authority to own property outside of the Hingham borders?
I'd have to have Rob answer that.
Subject check, I believe we can, but this was a situation where EverSource was going to build a substation. That's the understanding.
But we're paying for it and we're the
Yes.
ratepayers. Do we have a say?
What do you mean by do you have a say?
Do we have a say in terms of ratepayers and what we're going to pay for and own, or pay for and give away?
So this project, when we go to pay for this project, we will be going to town meeting to bond the project. So at that point, the ratepayers will have the chance to vote on the project.
Okay. Thank you. And just one last question, quick. When was the last time that the town of Hingham had a complete power outage?
I think the Chief Duff said it was 1991.
Complete, the whole town? was
Complete,
shut
the whole
down?
town was down for 23 hours.
23 hours.
Yep.
Okay. I don't remember that. I've lived here since 1980. I don't recall. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to offer a comment or a question? Mr. Duff, could you go over to the podium, please?
Thank you again, Mark Duff, 37 Bradley Park Drive. Just a point that I think needs to be made that I didn't realize until I came here tonight. And if the manager of the light department would be so good to clarify this. We currently have one feed point that comes from East Weymouth, correct?
So we have two lines on
But
one
it's-
pole.
It comes from one place in
Comes
East
from
Weymouth.
one place in East Weymouth.
If that place fails in Weymouth, we lose our power.
No, the transmission lines come from actually the EverSource transmission line. So National Grid taps two lines in Weymouth on the transmission structures.
But what I think the point I'm trying to make is the station at Hobart Street in Hingham is currently fed from one feed point, East
Cor-
Weymouth.
Correct.
If we go forward with this, it will then be fed by two feed points, East Weymouth and the new substation you're building, correct?
Correct.
So we will then have two feed points.
Correct.
I think that's important, and I think the light board needs to make a point of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have some people who are on remotely who would like to offer questions or comments.
Moving to the panel. W.
So there's Jean W. who is waiting, who is asked to participate.
Yeah, he's on the phone.
It's ZHONG W.
Hi, this is Yuan. I'm just using my dad's ID. My last name is WU. Yuan Wu is my name. Can you hear? Oh, sorry.
Yes.
So did you get that, David? Thank you. Thank you. Please go
Okay.
ahead.
So you can hear me all right?
We can't hear you. Thank you.
Perfect. My address is at 45 Roosevelt Road in Weymouth. I'm not a direct abutter, but I think we're very close. I think we're kind of very close to the pool and the rink. So I think that's where the Weymouth station was going to be built. So I have a couple of questions. We have young kids in the neighborhood, right? Where they play in the back. So I was wondering what is considered to be a safe distance in terms of EMF exposure from the Weymouth tap station or the proposed structures to be developed?
You know, if Crystal,
Is it Chris Long?
Yes, hopefully you can hear me. This is Chris Long. I'm a principal at Gradient, which is an environmental and health science consulting company based in Boston. We performed an EMF, electric and magnetic field assessment for the project. We did look at potential electric and magnetic field impacts from the tap station and looking at the closest residences on Roosevelt Road. From my understanding, those residences are on the other side of the EverSource right-of-way from where the tap station will be located. As a result, they are at a sufficient distance that electric and magnetic fields from equipment at this tap station, those diminish very rapidly with distance as you move away from the equipment. And it would be expected that electric and magnetic fields from the overhead lines within that right-of-way would be a greater source of EMF at that neighborhood than the tap station.
Sorry, the last part I didn't quite understand. So you think our neighborhood is more at exposure than the tap station?
No, that wasn't what I was saying.
Yes, I guess I was too tense to try and understand. But if
I'm
you could
sorry.
explain, like in a simple term, like in the layman's term. So it's safe enough. There, I know there's a little brook behind the house. But we also have a neighbor's yard that kind of goes beyond that little stream, that little brook. So you're saying the distance, like what in terms, like, is it like maybe 200 feet, 500 feet? Are we in at a safe distance from the exposure?
Correct. Yeah, I attended the meeting last week in Weymouth. I can't remember off the top of my head. Someone did provide some information on the distance from Roosevelt Road to this tap station. As I recall, it was at least hundreds of feet. And at that distance, the electromagnetic field impacts from the tap station will be very minimal. They drop off the equipment, the way it's constructed. Conductors are placed in very close proximity to each other. That results in cancellation of electric and magnetic fields, and the levels outside the fence line of the tap station would be expected to be small.
Okay, because the kids are very young in the neighborhood. We have like new babies are born just right across the street. So we kind of think of our kids that are playing around there. The other question is kind of a follow-up on this. So have there been any long-term studies on the prolonged EMF exposure to humans? I think last meeting at the Weymouth, you talked about how that would affect the fish in the brook, but what about people? Like, have we done any studies about that?
Yes, no, good question. I wasn't asked specifically about that at the last meeting. I can say that with respect to power frequency, electric and magnetic fields, there has been more than 4 decades of scientific study at this point, and more extensive scientific knowledge than for many chemicals that are used. So yes, it has been very extensively studied, and in addition, this body of health effects studies has been reviewed by a large number of governmental agencies, expert groups, and they've reached very similar and consistent conclusions that there are no confirmed health consequences from long-term or cumulative exposure to power frequency EMFs.
Okay, so you have experts, like the environmental experts have done study on this, right?
Yes,
I'm
they
sure
they have.
we just want to hear it. As a parent, we probably feel better here.
Yes, it has been extensively studied for a number of decades. And there are a number of very useful resources on the web. Like I said, governmental agencies have reviewed the body of health effects studies. The National Cancer Institute has a webpage about power frequency EMFs. The World Health Organization, WHO, has a number of resources about power frequency EMFs. Yeah, so there's some very, good, well-balanced summaries of that health effects literature.
Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
The next person asking to speak is Ann Fenton, who's on remotely.
Right now.
Okay.
She joined the conference.
So Ms. Fenton, would you like to speak?
Yes, I'm trying to get my picture. I'm sorry.
Well, we can.
Oh, wait a minute. I get it. Just a minute. All right. I have a very specific question. Oh, I'm Ann Fenton. That's F-A-N-T-O-N. I live at 46 Ridgewood Crossing, and Ridgewood Crossing opens up onto French Street, which is on the route on the way to Hobart Street. And I was particularly interested in the hearing tonight because of the timing, which was made quite clear by the presenters. And it seems to me that it's likely, although 2027, I think you said was the goal for beginning. A project like this is very likely to be delayed, so it could be a little later. But my concern is one that is really the responsibility of the town of Hingham. I recognize in that Front Street is falling apart. It was falling apart last year, probably the year before. And we now have to drive on it very carefully. My husband was told last week by a Department of Public Works employee who was out there filling potholes again, that they would not be doing anything else until your project, I guess, was completed. But I'm wondering, has the timing been made clear to the town of Hingham? That's a long way into the future for anyone who's driven down French Street this year or last. And basically HMLP made this timeline very clear to our Public Works Department and certainly to our town leaders, so that we can approach them with their having full knowledge of what your hopeful schedule is.
Yes, I've spoken with the DPW. They are aware that this project will not be taking place until the spring of 2027 at this point. They have told me that their plan is to do limited repairs on French Street until this project is completed. I guess the street is in need of a full depth reconstruction, and they are not going to spend that kind of money for the next couple of years. They're going to get it to where it's usable and try to maintain it at that point.
So am I left with asking them what they mean by getting it to where it's usable? Because even with the potholes, you have to drive zigzagging around it very carefully. And it goes not the whole length of French Street, but the better part of French Street from High to Hobart. So pothole filling it in, it really isn't sufficient. Perhaps they're planning on more, but do I then need to go directly to the town hall to find out if they're doing anything else? In other words, there's no recourse if they just say, sorry. It's a long time, and projects like this, I was involved in the Big Dig, even bigger. They don't get built as planned. I know you'll do your very best, but generally the timeline is longer. That's what we're left with.
Again, in my conversation with the DPW was they would do limited repairs over the next couple of years. I don't know what that entails, but it would be limited repairs.
Okay.
Thank you. Pam, would you like to come speak?
Like to. Oh.
My name is Mary Stack. I live at Hockley Drive, 2701 Hockley.
Can you spell your last name?
Stack. I guess I've got three questions. First of all, Eversource, despite making record profits last year, made record losses on their offshore wind facilities. And I'm a bit confused about how that happened when the rest of the world is making massive profits on wind technology. That's my first question. Have you given up on it?
I think that's an Eversource question.
A what? Oh, there's no one from Eversource here.
Yeah, thank you for your question, Erica Hafner, representing Eversource. That's not the subject of this particular proceeding or this particular project. So we don't have Eversource representatives here that can speak to that issue, but I can certainly put you in touch with outreach folks that can.
Regarding the dissemination of information, I actually concur with that woman who raised the issue that this information is not getting out into the community at all. So I have several suggestions to make. I live in Hingham Woods. I was the only one that knew about this. I got a flyer. It's the only communique I've ever had I never got any 7-page report that you referred to. So I'd suggest you go to the management company, the Dartmouth Group. That's all of these Hingham complexes just on Beale Street and run by management companies. We all have extensive internet connections. We all get mail almost daily from the management company. So that's one thing. Also, like if you put these sort of flyers in the reception area of some of the large buildings, like the one at the end of Beale Street, I also spoke to people there who didn't get any flyers. That's just suggestions for your communications people. If you really want to communicate, there are easy ways of doing it. Lastly, the woman that rang or came in on Zoom about EMFs, she should read the European studies on the effects on health, including the Lancet Medical Journal. Much more extensive research done in Europe. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else want to comment or ask a question? Is there someone? There's someone to Please come up then.
Hi, my name's Jane Marshall, Marshall, and I live on French Street in Hingham. And I have so many concerns about this. I agree this information was not disseminated. This was the first time I've heard of it. I had to work today, so I missed your presentation. But yeah, I feel terrible. This is not good for Hingham. It's so exponentially expensive. I've lived in this town for over 55 years, and I think I can count on one hand how many times we've been without electricity. I mean, it's been great. I brag about it. I'm like, we have our own light company. They're awesome. When other towns are losing their electricity, we totally have ours. Excuse me, I'm nervous. And I think it's super expensive, and we probably could just, the system that we have, it might be old, but it works. And so instead of spending $100 million, take some money and shore up what we have. I also have concerns about having Eversource, have control over how we get our electricity. Or my concern is it's going to be a couple of years and then Eversource will just take over Hingham Municipal Lighting Plant. We won't have our own lighting plant. Or we'll have to pay that Weymouth for, we'll have to rent their lines or rent that space that they have. It'll never stop. It'll just keep getting more and more expensive. Those are my concerns. And those are real concerns. I say, pump the brakes. Think about this before it gets started. I live on French Street, and driving that road is miserable. It should be repaved. I'm not going to wait 5 years. Well, we kicked this idea around. It's disgraceful. We pay a lot of money to live in this town, and I should have a good road to drive on. I think that's it. I think that covers it. This is not good for Hingham. It's just not good. We should think about it or think of a different plan, brainstorm, and go from there. Thank you very much. And I'm sorry I missed your presentation. I had to go to work.
If anybody else would like to speak, can you raise your hand? Ms. Wu? Oh. That's your last name. You're in the panel. Can you unmute yourself, please? Thank you.
Yes, I kind of like what this lady just said earlier. Instead of spending so much money and doing so much constructions in both towns, perhaps there is another way. to reduce all this impact on the environment. Thank you.
Mr. Shapiro?
Thank you. I wanted to add one more thing. The issue of notice has come up a few times, and I wanted to make sure that everybody at tonight's hearing understood that in addition to the required notice, the siting board required us in terms of first-class mail, libraries, et cetera, HMLP sent what we call a general manager's update to every billing address in Hingham and to every email address that HMLP had. And that GM update had a link to the notice and explained what and had information about tonight's hearing. And that's above and beyond what we were required to do by the siting board. I just wanted to make sure that was clear for the record.
Thank you. Please.
Again, Dr. Barry Belgorod, Belgorod, 344 High Street in Hingham. Two issues. In thinking about the presentation regarding EMF issues, and I don't see our expert on EMF there. If the power lines are going to be underground, how much does that provide insulation from EMF emissions? And do the conduits have some sort of cladding to them to prevent electromagnetic emissions from the underground power lines? Oh, I see you now.
Hi, this is Chris Long from Gradient again, and I can address that question. Placing the line underground, it is in effect a form of mitigation for a couple of reasons. First, electric fields are shielded by cable components, the duct bank itself, as well as the intervening earth. So there are no above ground electric fields above an underground transmission line. Magnetic fields are not shielded in the same way as electric fields, so there still are above ground magnetic fields above an underground transmission line. That being said, by placing the lines underground, it's possible to put the conductors in closer proximity to each other than it is possible for an overhead transmission line. And by placing the conductors in close proximity to each other, that promotes cancellation of magnetic fields. So those are two reasons why placing lines underground, it is a source of mitigation.
Thank you. That's two very cogent points. The other question, I came here understanding the reason for the project to create greater redundancy. But what I heard was that barring something happening to one of the two existing feeds, we have had reasonable redundancy, preventing major power outages. One thought that crossed my mind was, is it possible to separate the two existing power feeds in a way that would create greater redundancy and less vulnerability to one event knocking out both feeds?
So we did look at the possibility of separating the lines. Unfortunately, along the railroad tracks, there isn't enough real estate, not only in the Hingham section, but beyond the East Weymouth back to the Eversource transmission line. Those include single structures also. Some of those areas are even tighter than the ones in Hingham. So we didn't have the opportunity to, suggest a project that would separate the lines.
just seemed to me that that might be somewhat more economical than putting in a third. But I'm a layperson in this field, so thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak tonight? Ms. Wu? If you unmute yourself, you can speak.
Hi, this is Yuan Wu again. I just have one more question. I remember near that new tap station is also very close to the rink and pool. And there's also an outdoor, like open baseball, soccer fields. Would that be safe enough for the kids? Like, we're going to go to the pool, go to play baseball there. I know it's on the other side of maybe the Eversource property. I'm sure you guys probably looked at it, but if I could hear a little bit more about that, that would be great. Is there any impact for those activities?
Are you asking with regard to EMF or?
What probably the ground transmission, right? What are some of the radiation or EMF impact to the children at the pool, at the baseball field?
Mr. Long?
Yes, I can address that. I mean, those, from my understanding, it's about at least 50 feet from where the nearest equipment at the tap station would be located to the edge of the parking lot. And then, I mean, the baseball fields are beyond that. I mean, those are at distances where you would expect the electromagnetic fields from the tap station equipment to have dropped off to low levels.
So the closest place is probably the rink and the pool. You said 50 feet sound really close. Does it?
From an EMF perspective, 50 feet is a large distance, and that allows electromagnetic fields to drop off to low levels.
It's a few hundred feet. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions or comments they'd like to make tonight? In that case, I'd like to thank everyone for participating. I'd like to remind you that comments and requests for participation are due Monday, April 14th, 2025. We welcome your input and your questions. The information is important in our review of the proposed project. If you have questions relating to tonight's hearing or want a clarification of the Siting Board's review of this case or anything else related to this hearing, please email me at donna.sharkey@mass.gov. I'd like to thank everyone for their participation tonight and for the comments and questions that you have offered regarding the proposed project. Thank you very much. Off the record.